Good evening, everyone. Before we get started, if we have any folks in the house that need Spanish translation, I'm going to turn it over to Isabel real quick so she can deliver the instructions on how we'll get you engaged.
Buenas noches. Si alguien de ustedes necesita interpretación en español, en la parte inferior de la pantalla de su computadora, tiene que ser en su computadora, van a ver una manita que dice levantar la mano. Tienen que apretar esa manita para que sean transferidos a otra pantalla. Okay, I did the announcement.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. Good evening, Berkeley community. My name is Dr. Philip Shelley, and I am the Director of Student Services for the Berkeley Unified School District. Welcome to tonight's presentation of the BUSD Mental Health Needs Assessment. Next slide, please. Okay. So just quickly, some of the logistics. Isabella already let folks know about the breakout room for interpretations. We'll have questions that'll be typed actually into the Q&A section. So you'll be able to type questions in the Q&A, and then at the end of the presentation, we'll read the answers out loud and answer the questions again at the conclusion of the presentation. Next slide, please. Okay, so before we begin tonight's presentation, please allow me to recite the district's mission, which is to enable and inspire our diverse student body to achieve academic excellence and make positive contributions to our world. Our mission is encapsulated in the 4 E's: excellence, equity, engagement, and enrichment. And now I'd like to introduce you to our Associate Superintendent, Jill Hogendijk. She's amazing, and she's going to say a few words.
Thank you, Dr. Shelley. Good evening, everyone. We're really excited to see you all here and excited for the opportunity to share the results of the needs assessment. I want to acknowledge Dr. Shelley and Rosina Karen, who you'll be seeing later, alongside of our community partners and city agencies. I'm not sure if Jonathan Maddox is here yet. But this was a really extensive effort to interview and survey our communities because we deeply hold the importance of our mental health and wellness of our students. That has become abundantly clear, especially coming out of COVID, and just want to acknowledge that we are a district that is committed to the mental health and wellness of our students and to the supports that we are able to provide for them. We have invested resources, and we have community agencies and partners who have come alongside of us in that work. And so we're excited to be able to anchor and ground that work in a needs assessment. And we're also excited to be able to share some of the good work that's already underway in this area. So thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you, Jill. Next slide, please. Okay, so the objectives for tonight's webinar, so we'll be communicating the findings from the needs assessment. We'll hear recommendations that came from the needs assessment as well from RDA to provide you an update on what's been done and what's coming up. We're going to highlight some of the work that's being done at Berkeley High School in the areas of health and wellness, including the Wellness Center. And then we'll be answering questions from the community at the end of the webinar again. Next slide, please. Okay. So the MHSSA, which is the acronym for Mental Health Student Services Act, we received the grant. The Mental Health Student Services Act has oversight from the Oversight and Accountability Commission, which is the MHSOAC. It is a mouthful, but nonetheless, they have oversight. The MHSSA partner programs are tasked with following objectives in addition and complement to those that you see listed on the slide. So additionally, there's providing outreach to families, employers, primary healthcare providers, and others to promote recognition of early signs of potentially severe and disabling mental health challenges. Next slide, please. Actually, could you go back to the last slide for me real quick? Oh, I just want to point something out. In the coming days, the presentation will be posted on the Student Services webpage. And at the bottom of this particular slide, there is a link to learn more about MHSSA. So I want to just point that out. That's on this slide. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so talking about the assessment, I want to introduce some folks to you. But before we do that, I just want to remark that this assessment furthers the commitments that are made, that have been made by BUSD in its application for the MHSSA grant funding, and will provide the district with a foundation for establishing a strategy to support the mental health well-being of students, families, and staff in the upcoming years. So at this time, I'm going to introduce a few folks to you, beginning with Rosina Karen. Rosina is the BUSD Mental Health Coordinator and is leading the governance board, which I'll talk about in a little bit, for the MHSSA grant. There's Carolyn Perez, who is the care navigator for Berkeley Unified School District. Again, that position comes out of the plan approved for the grant. We have Jonathan Maddox, who's with the city of Berkeley. He leads the Family, Youth, and Children's Mental Health Program. He's the supervisor. There is the MHSSA Governance Board, which I mentioned before, which is a combination of community members, BUSD staff, City of Berkeley staff, and there's also a student on the governance board. Next slide, please. So to introduce you also to the members of the governance board, again, a diverse group of stakeholders within the Berkeley Unified School District. There's Doreen Bracamontes from Berkeley High School, Monique Buffler, and these are in alphabetical order. Monique Buffler is a community member. Gabe Fredman, a vice principal at one of our middle schools. Jenna Holmes, a principal at one of our elementary schools. Mentioned Rosina Karen again. There's Sandra Loving, community member. Jonathan Maddox from the City of Berkeley Youth Mental Health Program. Jasdeep Mali, intervention counselor at Berkeley High School. CC Mixa, middle school counselor. And then we have Zach Meredith, also from the City of Berkeley. And our student is Siobhan Williams Johnson from Berkeley High School. Okay, next slide, please. So now I would like to introduce to you Courtney Davis and Christy Spees from RDA Consulting. They're going to present their findings and recommendations, and then we're going to come back at the conclusion of their section of the presentation and share the current implementation efforts for you tonight.
Great, thank you, Dr. Shelley. Let me just share slides and we will dive right in. Okay. Dr. Shelley, can I get a quick thumbs up? Are the slides showing? Okay, yes. Thank you for that. Well, thank you for inviting us here tonight. My name is Courtney Davis. I'm a senior consultant with RDA Consulting and had the privilege to work with my colleagues Nicole Stewart-Strang and Christy Spees and Rosina and Carol and Jonathan and many other team members across Berkeley Unified School District to conduct the assessment and present the recommendations that you're hearing this evening. There are a number in the report and we were able to hear from so many people across the district. So just a note that tonight is a bit of a high-level summary. But we really hope to be able to share the recommendations and some of those really core themes that came out of the work that BUSD is already doing and where that grant can continue to support the district. All right, so first, before I dive into the findings and recommendations, I'm just going to spend a few minutes to share with you what went into the assessment and what that looked like. How we really engaged with the school community at all levels, And so first, just kind of a glimpse of that assessment timeline. We kicked off this work really in April, and May was that heavy data gathering, that engagement month where we had a number of different groups that I will share shortly. And then here in June and July over the summer was really taking all of that feedback, going through the data, putting together those themes that really came forward from that sharing and conversation. And coming forward then with these initial recommendations. And then August moving forward brings us here tonight as Berkeley Unified School District really takes that assessment and plan forward into implementation. So first, just to share a little bit about what did that data collection look like. And so we really work to get a broad representation of voice and experience and input into that assessment. And so almost 200 individuals in those 30 days of May were engaged to participate. And again, that was really across the school community, from school administrators to mental health service providers to teachers and support staff to students and families and caregivers. There were really engagement at all pieces. So what that looked like is there were interviews with school administrators and mental health services staff. There were a number of different focus groups hosted. Those focus groups engaged staff across the elementary, the middle, and the high schools. There were specific groups to really connect and have conversation with mental health providers, both those who are employed directly by Berkeley Unified School District and some of the partners and partnerships that the district has in community. There were focus groups with students at Berkeley Technical Academy. And then there was an effort really to engage with families, with parents, caregivers, and broader family members. And those focus groups really happened through the affinity spaces that Berkeley Unified School District already hosts and supports. And moves forward. And we did host, one of those groups was hosted with families in Spanish. So again, really making sure that we were having inclusive feedback and getting those very different and varied experiences across the district. In addition to that, student voice from the focus groups, there were peer-to-peer student interviews that also happened. So a group of high school students were trained on how to use that interview protocol. And worked with RDA and with Rosina, and then they actually in turn turned around and had conversations with fellow students to really be able to, again, deepen that feedback and understand those different experiences and needs that were happening across the district. And finally, in addition to rounding out that number, we're just a number, almost over 50, just individual and small group interviews with staff. So really have to call out there Carol and Rosina, who really had meaningful conversation and continued to take those focus groups and elevate them to bring in even more feedback. So in addition to that primary data that touched almost 200 individuals, there was also a look at some of the secondary data. So what that entailed was looking at district demographic information, looking at attendance data, and other district and site level. So being able to really drill into each school site. And then looking at other complementary assessments and reports. So looking back and reflecting on previous needs assessments that had been done, looking at different student and family and staff mental well-being and wellness surveys that had been done both at the state and national levels, and being able to let that all inform the findings and the recommendations that you're hearing tonight. So from all of that data gathering and then spending that time in data analysis, we really came forward and organized what you'll see tonight into two sections. So first, there is just the overarching assessment findings. So we're going to talk about what is really working well at the district. And there was so much that we heard, so many successes across school sites and the district as a whole. So we really want to lift those up. And then where are some areas of barriers maybe to access and services or opportunities for improvement that can continue to help the district align with the grant that Dr. Shelley talked about and serve students. In addition to the overarching assessment findings that we'll share tonight, findings were further identified from data analysis and grouped into 3 core tiers of support and impact. And they were aligned with recommendations as how Berkeley Unified School District might work to better address concerns and needs of staff, students, and families. Or in some cases, really, it's just improving upon and continuing to build upon initial work and systems that are already in place. And we know that it takes time to continue to build that out across all school sites and support that as the years continue to move on. So those pieces that we're going to look at are going to look at administration and district-wide, students and families, and staff and school sites. One note, and I'll say this one more time when we get to recommendations, but the groupings are not sharing who provided feedback. So when we get into each of these 3, really the collective feedback from parents, students, administrators, teachers, and staff contributed to all 3 of these categories, but rather this is where the input and subsequent actions from recommendations would best be placed for creating positive outcomes for the district. And so we'll see that with the recommendations. So for an example, administration and district-wide area, that is really intended to share feedback and findings about what actions would be most impactful to take place at the district level to improve those mental health services and wellness outcomes for students and families. Okay, so let's start here and talk about what is working well and the stories and experiences we were really able to glean and hear from those focus groups and interviews. So to just start here, many staff providers, parents, caregivers across the USD really want to be a part of efforts to improve resources and school-based supports for all students in the district. We heard resoundingly that all of these individuals are just very much aware of the mental health needs and want to continue to be a part of the positive change. There's a lot of readiness and there's already a lot of engagement happening across the district. So there's kind of that school community wrapping around students. And then with that as well, Berkeley Unified School District has already successfully hired and filled the roles of mental health coordinator, so Rosina, and care navigator, Carol. So really having those key people who can continue to build engagement and relationships of respect and kind of build that excitement and continued growth and improvement environment that Berkeley Unified School District has committed to. In addition to that, there have been a number of what we call micro successes in supporting mental health and wellness for students within individual schools. And this is really a result of caring staff, family, and community members. So there were a number of examples shown of different programs or mentorship opportunities or different types of engagement pieces that were really happening on each school site and happening from elementary to middle to high school. And there were also some good feedback shared among that as well of school administrators really reporting liking having that shift of many of the psychologists to become school employees, just allowing that to have that tighter tie. Some students who have engaged in mental health services and support at Berkeley Unified School District reported that they have really found that helpful to their overall wellness and school engagement. And there was just a lot of active volunteerism and support and integration of parents and caregivers into the school setting as well. And finally, with that, there were individual teachers and other staff who really continued to identify building social emotional skills in their classrooms, were interweaving that with student interactions, and really helping prioritize that with the use of trauma-informed approaches and across students and families. Okay, so with that, there were opportunities of where could things be grown upon, where could something be expanded, or where was there something new maybe to even look at? And so some of the barriers that came from that feedback as well is there was some feedback from families and staff who really reported a lack of awareness and understanding of what mental health services are presently available and how to really connect students to them. So that kind of communication and sharing of resources, and just some reflection on oftentimes those student behaviors is what was linking to services wanting some of that earlier intervention. In addition to that, while some students reported positive experiences with school-based services, others shared maybe negative experiences. So additionally, there were a number of students who maybe are not yet able to receive that appropriate school-based support, whether from availability or that knowledge piece. So some of these, of course, overlap and tie together. Some other things that we heard as well was lacking role clarity, direction, and training for some of the staff, and how that was a frustration point and sometimes could limit support for student resources. So really looking at what school staff scopes are and how they can contribute to that mental health and wellness of the district. And then the final one here is inequitable resourcing across the district, sometimes further limits ability to consistently and proactively address mental health and wellness students across all tiers of need. And again, this is a bit of an acknowledgement of there are many elementary schools, number of middle, and then all feeding into the high. So just kind of balancing that across all school sites. Okay, so those were kind of those first two areas. Now, before I jump into recommendations, just wanted to share some overarching themes that really came forward from the findings. And so in addition to those core tiers that were identified, these are the 4 overarching themes and really will continue to be essential and support Berkeley Unified School District and partners as work continues to move forward. So these included the creation and sustainability of a diversity-informed environment. So staff and families really spoke to the ongoing work to address student needs through a trauma-informed lens. And then there was also this feedback of families of color really sharing that services and supports have not always focused on honoring diversity of students, backgrounds, and experiences. So how to really bring in that diversity-focused lens, a focused approach to improving that social health and wellness that addresses racial disparities that are experienced by students. The next one is equitable distribution of resources and services. So school sites across the district primarily operate independently and differ in their abilities for resource coordination. So sometimes this is impacting across different income disparities that the school district might have, or many school districts also shared experiences of relying on PTA funding to support some of that mental health programming and wellness, which can vary year to year. The next is a theme of really looking and needing to develop and support district-wide protocols, policy, and process. So oftentimes that lack of staff clarity that came forward, or not having maybe those sustainable practices that then lead to some of that confusion. So developing that district-wide protocol and policy opposed to maybe the school site local of those. And finally, continuing to have a focus on student well-being and prevention-focused interventions. So again, there's a lot of great micro successes that are happening across the district. And many of the services and resources really are geared at serving students who are in current need, and really, because of that limitation, need to prioritize that current and more severe need, really that desire to get to the prevention side and supporting students. Also really looking at how do we support families and the struggles that families are having, whether that be with housing insecurity, job loss, substance use, addiction, or many other things that may be impacting student wellness. And just to note, this is just a high level, so a complete accounting of all of these findings will be available at a later date as well in the final needs assessment report. Okay, we're going to jump into the recommendations and talk about those for the next little bit here. And then just a reminder, as we go through these recommendations, they are going to be grouped by those 3 areas that we talked about. So we'll start with administration and district-wide. And just a reminder that the feedback from all of the focus groups, all of the interviews, whether it be students, teachers, staff, families, caregivers, all really fed into each of these 3 areas. The grouping really was about where are the recommendations best placed for creating, again, those positive outcomes that Berkeley Unified School District has committed to. Okay, so our first recommendation here is really just a recommendation for the need of and development of a diversity-informed district-wide strategic plan. And this would be a strategic plan specifically to support student mental health and having really clear communication pathways within that strategic plan, a clear definition of mental health for Berkeley Unified School District. I know when we say mental health, mental wellness, varied things can come to mind, but really having that district identity for what that looks like and what the outcomes for students would like to see and have that be. Part of that including a really great asset map and really understanding what are the different services and those micro successes that are happening at different school sites, and how is there opportunity to maybe take those from one site to another and continue to serve more students. And then with that, establishing a format and a method of listening and feedback that really can continue to have staff, students, and parents and caregivers, participate in that feedback loop, continue to give direction and support to the district. So then the next piece of that, a little bit related still to that strategic plan, but really just that development of a district-wide strategy for mental health supports and services. So again, really being clear on what those priorities and goals for work are, clear processes and protocols, and very clear position descriptions for how staff might directly support and engage with mental health and wellness services. And potentially intertwining this with strategic planning. Another recommendation there is to explore benefits of shifting to more of a centralized contracting process with community-based organizations. And this was paired with a finding that oftentimes school districts or school sites within the district are independently doing this contracting and seeking those services. So again, just streamlining some of that support so that it can be carried out across the district. All right, this next one is the district recommendation to develop a comprehensive crisis intervention plan and identify a central crisis response worker for the district. This would be someone who during a crisis and crisis response periods could really lead that situation and coordinate it, and in between really be able to focus on prevention and preventative activities for staff and students. And really this was paired with that finding that many of those current supports and services at the school are really focused on that tier 2 and 3. So serving students who have more of that severe need and looking for more prevention as part of this recommendation. And this pairs with that as well, kind of finding with that same finding. So there's greater need for prioritization and provision of tier 1 support to increase mental health and wellness, and really focusing this across all students. So evolving that from crisis and triage to prevention and preventative support where possible. And part of that is increasing that social and emotional learning support through the incorporation of greater social connection in the school day. So especially thinking about how that can be embedded within the school day, maybe in a designated homeroom period for student connection building, and really carving out space so that it isn't an add-on to student days and building in more of those mentorship opportunities. All right. So this next one is in coordination between Berkeley Unified School District and individual school administrators, conduct a district-wide financial assessment that identifies current per capita student funding within each school site. And then that is paired with the next recommendation really of developing a base mental health budget allocation for each school site, and really ensuring that equitable allocation of dollars. And again, that was with some of that feedback of there have been pockets of notable increase in needs for students, and a lot of that, as Dr. Shelley and mentioned, in the impact of the COVID pandemic, but really continuing to make sure that those services are consistently prioritized and provided at all school sites. Next recommendation here is increasing care navigation and student and family case management capacity across the district, and being able to incorporate positions that can provide those services across school sites. And a care navigation coordinator who can also be a part of that supervisory structure. So if you'll remember that key theme we heard of really looking and calling out some of those family support needs that we know impact mental health and wellness, whether it be housing, employment, food, substance use, but really having a role or roles within the district who can support those kind of wraparound pieces of family need that impact our student health and wellness. And then the next one here was establish and support a feedback and communication process specific to mental health services and planning, that provides regular pathways for the district to hear ideas, concerns, and needs from staff, students, and parents and caregivers. So again, really that nod to building a district-wide definition and coordinated approach to mental health support and services. And just the robust and participatory nature that was really there for the data gathering. We heard a lot of their encouragement of wanting to continue to give that voice, a lot of gratitude for having those focus groups and for the district taking this step to continue their Mental Health Student Services Act funding, but wanting to see that sustained into the future. So kind of growing on something that's already working well with those feedback loops. All right, and this is our last one for this section, and then we'll shift over to staff and school sites. But supporting a learning and sharing collaborative that provides regular connections between administrators and mental health professionals across all school sites. So building again that unified strategy to really increase program collaborations, share best practices, and provide space for integration and growth of community partnerships and school-based services. So again, trying to think of the district in that holistic standpoint and not school site to school site. All right, so then when we think about recommendations and where they might be placed or where that positive outcome would come from, let's look at staff and school sites. So here the recommendation was within these sites to expand cost team membership to include frontline staff positions that have regular interactions with students. So whether that be aides or safety officers, and really to support a more inclusive service team. And that really came from findings of staff expressing the need for more consistent communication about mental health needs and best practices across the whole staff team. The next is to provide more focused professional development opportunities for staff that cover the breadth of mental health and wellness needs for students and self-support, and also ensuring that these opportunities are afforded and required to all staff at school sites and district administration. So again, making sure that it's not for teaching staff only or aides only, but really, again, that holistic staff training and development opportunity. That kind of goes on to this next slide of developing those opportunities really should include, but not be limited to continued inclusion of social emotional learning skills in the classroom, teaching, and school-based interaction, unconscious bias, diversity training, trauma-informed training, and really further ensure that this is incorporated into both annual staff development plans, new employee orientation, and ongoing training processes. Okay, so let's go ahead and shift now to some of those student and family recommendations. So this really paired with the finding that students and families both really express the importance of needing and wanting to feel both physically and emotionally safe at school and to have that sense of belonging and community. We also heard this from mental health providers and school staff and administrators about the importance of this at the school site. And so the recommendations here really are to prioritize and support the development of more group-based therapies and social connection building spaces. So through diversity-informed principles, establishing groups across all school sites to provide that sustainable space. And again, to really have that as a presence within the school day itself, opposed to maybe an extracurricular. That was a lot of the feedback of that finding there. The next recommendation is to assess current space dedicated to mental health and wellness supports. So including physical spaces and school day periods of time, and then establish a clear strategy to ensure students have access to both physically inviting spaces as well as protected time during the school day that will further support building meaningful connections and normalize mental health and wellness. Not new, I'm sure, to many of us, but of course, we still heard from students a lot of that stigma or not wanting to be called out as they're really trying to build those social, emotional, and wellness connections. So again, trying to find that normalization within the school day, whether it be in a homeroom or a certain time each week. The next is to really further assess the trend of increasing school avoidance, absenteeism, and student anxiety that might limit participation. So transition approaches away from punishment or punitive-based solutions that can further traumatize or exclude students from time. So again, we heard just kind of that need for students to have continued growing and evolving within the school-based environment. So we heard a lot of identified and expressed needs of maybe third and fourth graders who are really having a harder time right now with some of those impulse controls. And we know that those are the years that really had some of our most impacted pandemic periods of remote learning and not in the classroom at those young ages. Some just feedback around supporting serious eating disorders or other isolation tendencies that might be coming forward. And with that continues to bring forward the shift to prioritizing more tier 1 support. So again, those prevention-focused supports for students across social, emotional learning and mental health learning to really address those student-driven needs that are identified in those findings. All right, just a couple more. So the next recommendations are to continue to be consistent and support-oriented to build bridges and relationships with families. So increasing family support services through social workers and other school-based roles to improve capacity to provide parent education or some of those family navigation services that we talked about, that need being there. Develop a comprehensive communication plan to just strengthen awareness of resources available for students and their families. So continuing to increase transparency around district and community services available. We know that not all of those services can happen within the district, but where can they be also with those community partners and how can families navigate to them? All right, last two. And so these last two really paired with findings that came out of the focus groups from Berkeley Technical Academy and Berkeley High School students, and just with different experiences across school systems and those mental health services. So the recommendations here are to continue to develop and implement universal screening and assessment. So this is something that's already underway as part of the Mental Health Student Services Act. So it's an opportunity just to continue to move that forward and ensure that when that does, that the application is inclusive of all students at regular intervals throughout the school year. And of course, paired with that is really being able to consistently provide that assessment and then turn around with solution-focused supports at the ready. So many of those other recommendations would feed into that. And then the final one is increasing mentorship, including peer mentorship and student relationship building and connection opportunities that, again, are incorporated within the school day. So students would most benefit from these opportunities if they were operationalized as a core school day component to, again, kind of limit that additional burden on evening, weekends, missed class times, and from students hearing, again, just that stigma piece and wanting it to be normalized in their school day. So I think that takes us to the end of the findings and the recommendations. So I am going to pass back over to Dr. Shelley. Thank you.
Thank you, Courtney. So we'll just get the other slide deck reloaded back. Okay, awesome. Oh, by the way, if there are any questions that anyone has, please put them in the Q&A link down at the bottom of your Zoom screen. You'll be able to put in any questions you have in down there. So just want to remind you of that. Okay, so we'll continue on. So moving forward, as previously stated, the three sections of recommendations are administration and district-wide, BUSD staff and school sites, and students and families. Okay. Now, BUSD current alignment with the recommendations from the administration and district-wide section, and I'll highlight a few of those, are we've centralized the CBO contracts that we currently have, and also our K-5 schools have mental health providers on site. The crisis plan and protocols is currently in development. That'll be coming soon. I want to highlight the Care Navigator again. That's the role currently occupied by Carolyn Perez. And in highlighting this particular role, and it may have been said previously, but this role will provide navigation support for parents and caregivers of students identified as needing higher levels of mental health services or as needing assistance linking to other sources of mental health support. By connecting families to additional services outside of BUSD, the Care Navigator will ensure that families have access to services that sometimes they may otherwise have not been able to receive. The Care Navigator will liaise closely with staff at the various schools, the City of Berkeley Mental Health Department, community-based mental health providers, as well as parents and caregivers to ensure that students who need mental health services on campus have access to them, and students who need additional support from outside agencies to get that support as well by referral. And then, so currently we're in the pilot phase of Carol's work at Malcolm X Elementary School, and of course it will be expanded as we continue to collect data and make alterations as needed to enroll, but it will be expanded currently at Malcolm X. Okay, now all schools again have that mental health provider on site. We've put in stipends for mental health interns to increase the quality of interns that we have, and also to be competitive with all the other agencies in the Bay Area that are bringing in interns. And then we've also created a BUSD MHSSA program website, which will detail the work that's going on for the MHSSA grant, some of the things that we're doing, as well as provide updates to that work. Next slide, please. Next, the BUSD current alignment with the recommendations for BUSD staff and school sites are mental health coordinator. Again, that's Rosina Karen, who's filling that. We have mental health first aid training, youth mental health first aid training. And I don't know if Rosina, if you can just step in real quick. We have a mental health first aid training coming up in a couple of weeks available to parents. Part of what we want to do is also provide youth mental health first aid training to parents as well. We did that last year. We're doing it again this year, and we'll continue to hold those and provide information on when those will be coming up. I don't know, Rosina, if you're available, just briefly to mention the date. If not, then we'll add that later on in the Q&A section. Okay, so we'll add it to the Q&A section. All right. And then of course, there's the care navigator position. And then the current alignments with the recommendations for students and family section are the Health and Wellness Center, which you will hear a lot about coming up when we do the presentation with the Berkeley High School folks. They'll talk about health and wellness, so we want to highlight the work that they're doing. That'll be coming up later on in the presentation. We also have the mental health peer education program in high school, and we plan to expansion of services at Berkeley Technology Academy, which is going to include bringing in a wellness center on that campus, as well as starting a peer mental health education program on the campus of BTA as well. We've have the chronic absenteeism program that we've begun this year, and of course, this is Attendance Awareness Month. You can see the one of the banners that I have behind me, and there's a range of things that we're doing in terms of chronic absenteeism program. Again, there's mental health first aid training. I know that the meet counselor, who has I think they've modified the name, but meet counselor has also trained to do youth mental health first aid training. So some of that work will be done at Berkeley High School. And then of course, we'll also be providing mental health first aid training to stakeholder groups within the district. And then there's the mental health screening tool creation and pilot, which is currently in development, will be done very, very soon, and will be piloted and then expanded. That's the mental health screening tool. Next slide, please. Okay, so on this next slide, real quickly about the budgeting from the MHSSA grant, you'll see different sections pertaining to year 1, year 2, 3, 4, and then of course the program development. We are currently in year 1, which is set to end at the end of in November, and then we'll transition into year 2. But just to give you an idea of some of the funding or how some of it's been spent in year 1, and I'll give you information regarding year 2. Approximately $287,000 has been spent on salaries. Again, that provides salary for the mental health coordinator, the care navigator, and also pays part of the salary for the City of Berkeley FYC program supervisor. There's also been money spent on consulting and of course this assessment. Some of that funds with RDA consulting, approximately $75K. And then we've also spent money on our youth mental health first aid trainings that we've been doing. Year 2 costs, with the year 2 costs, there's increase in funding. And in the year 2 costs, we'll have approximately $298K in salaries. We've included in there $105K for intern stipends. We've used some of the money, approximately $200,000 for services with our CBOs, again, with the goal of having a mental health provider on site at all of our elementary schools. We're investing $20,000 into the wellness room for Berkeley Technology Academy, which will be opening up in the spring semester. So that's 2024, that's coming up. We're in the planning phases of that right now. And then the $45,000 for the peer education pilot again at BTA. And then there's money set aside for the youth mental health first aid training. Any funds that aren't expended during the current year, they may be rolled over into the next year. where we can continue to use that money, or if need be, go back to the mental health, the MHSSA board, and we can repurpose funding as things come up throughout the course of the 4 years. So we may be able to also repurpose any unspent dollars as they roll over into the next year. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, perfect. So right now we're going to highlight the BHS Health and Wellness Services. I believe Melissa and Doreen are here from Berkeley High School. And so we will turn it over to them and let them go ahead and tell you about all the wonderful things at Berkeley High School.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Doreen Bracamontes here. I am the Vice Principal of School Climate and Student Wellness. And in a minute or two, my colleague Melissa Virueta will introduce herself. We're going to share some of the slide info here tonight. So first off, Yellow Jackets Give and Get Support is our school motto this year. Every staff member just symbolically has a t-shirt with our motto. Our student leadership and ASB students have joined in on this collective motto for the whole site. And it's really indicative of what our focus and goals are here at Berkeley High School. In an upcoming board meeting, sometime in the next month or two, I anticipate that I'll be able to go into more depth with information about our wellness center. Tonight, Melissa and I are going to share 4 categories or areas of focus on our campus. You'll see a number of bullets, but we're just really going to highlight 1 or 2 items from each slide. Next, thank you. So the highlights that we're going to make really are accumulation of going over assets, resources, and work in progress here at Berkeley High School. A little bit of context, my position was a new position 1 year ago. And so it's really a signal that the district and leadership, staff, family, students here at Berkeley High School made a commitment to allocating resources with an administrator to be able to take a look at existing assets at Berkeley High School, really develop targeted and strategic efforts to be able to pull all of the rich resources we have on campus to amplify, improve, and scale the items that are going on at Berkeley High already that help students. So we'll talk about coordination of services, professional development, communication, and services to students. Next slide. So there's a lot going on to focus on coordinating services across the site. Our site has 3,400 students approximately, and we have a number of new roles that I'll highlight that allow us to really pull together and scale the work that individual staff members have been doing over a large number of years. So there's my position. There's a Title IX counselor that's been added to our site, a mental health and well-being coordinator. This role is really significant. It's really a symbol of the partnership that the city of Berkeley has and their commitment to our site and our students. This is a position that was funded by the city of Berkeley and really put us over the top with being able to move forward with opening a wellness center that's fully staffed. There's a wellness counselor. This wellness counselor is a role that the district funded, and also there's a partnership with the city of Berkeley. This person came on board in order to bring back the peer education program for mental health peer educators, as well as fulfill other needs on our site. Okay, next slide. So here's just, there may be people on this webinar who haven't yet had children at Berkeley High School. So I just wanted to highlight the really robust counseling services that we have here at our site. We have a lot of counselors, and while there are counselors who are attached to every learning community, we also have counselors who are attached to specific special programs to provide focused supports for our students. So here at Berkeley High School, we're able to really zero in on focal populations and targeted supports for them. Next slide. Okay, here to highlight on communication, this is an area where we are improving and focused on increasing the communication that we have, particularly outside with our parents. And so we have the ability now with some of our new roles and this focus to provide additional information nights. Last year we had a couple. We had a Title IX parent information night. We had a adolescent mental health and wellness parent information night. This year we'll be able to host information nights monthly. And what I wanted to highlight is the very last bullet. Our wellness counselor created a mental health and wellness website. It's a website full of resources for our students and our community. And that's something that we're advertising more and more. And the great thing about the website is as we get more resources, the website just grows and becomes more robust. And I think I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Melissa.
Hi, everyone. I am Melissa Virreta. I am in the new role that Doreen just talked about as the Mental Health and Wellbeing Coordinator here at Berkeley High School. A big part of my role is just building staff capacity to provide those services to our students. And so I'm going to highlight a little bit about the professional development that's happened at Berkeley High. Some highlights so far this year are that we have been able, actually as of Monday, we will have trained 17 people in youth mental health first aid, which is really exciting. That includes 5 VPs, 2 deans, our principal, our 504 program supervisor, our special education program supervisor, our entire wellness team, and our on-campus intervention team. So we're very excited to be able to roll out all these different areas of PD for our classified staff, certificated staff, administrators, and community partners. Next slide, please. The other piece that I wanted to highlight is our services to students. As Doreen talked about, we have a lot of people here on campus to specifically support student mental health, but some of the services that we're now coordinating and highlighting, for example, are our care and crisis response team. And so this has really been a coordination between mental health staff and administrators to ensure that we have a coordinated and comprehensive response from start to finish for student crises. And so that's one example that we're highlighting from our services to students that includes some of that coordination and that professional development that we're doing across groups of people to better support our students. Next slide.
Okay. For this slide, this is a glimpse. This again is something that will be shared when the entire implementation team gets to go more in depth at a school board meeting in the coming months. And this is just to capture and show the community that while Berkeley High School is opening the first wellness center in our district, we've also collaborated with people outside of our site. And this is an example of our mission statement here at Berkeley High School. The Wellness Center is a space where all students can reset, recharge, and make connections. Our students influenced the mission statement and responded and helped us revise, and we got to a mission statement that worked for students as well as staff members. And here below also is a definition of wellness. Wellness is experiencing intellectual, emotional, social, and physical safety that allows each student to show up as their full self. Wellness is the presence of a coordinated system of people, programming, and spaces that are designed so that all students get what they need. We believe that students' wellness is nurtured when the community sees who they are, meets them where they are, and works alongside them to imagine and achieve informed, culturally responsive, personal and occupational possibilities for their future. To be well and thrive, a student's identity, community, and culture are critical elements that must be uplifted, affirmed, and amplified in their school life. And then Melissa, will you talk about dimensions of wellness and where it comes from?
Sure. And so there are in general 8 dimensions of wellness. We've really decided to focus on the physical, intellectual, emotional, social, and occupational dimensions in our working definition, because we really want to focus on the components of students that we are really responsible for as educators, and building them up and really creating this set of coordinated systems so that we're able to have students feeling physically safe at school, to feel intellectually safe, to take risks, to participate in class, to really be open to engagement in their learning, emotionally safe, that they have adults they can trust, that we're building up the capacity of our staff to really understand unconditional positive regard and its relationship to emotional safety, social safety, really facilitating building peer connections and leaning on each other for support within the school context. And finally is occupational safety. We really want to make sure that we're preparing students for a future beyond Berkeley High School, where they understand these other 4 dimensions of their wellness to build their capacity to go out and be contributing members of their society and world. And so that's why we've really chosen to focus in on these 5 dimensions.
Thank you. And the last thing on this page are the Berkeley High School Wellness Center priorities. And what I'd like to highlight for the community is that the mission statement and the priorities are really the anchors to be able to inform, regardless of who holds what particular position or who's engaging in the work, that we have anchors that inform us about our programming. It helps us to make decisions about what programming, prevention, and education really belongs in the wellness space or not. So priority 1, lowering students' affective filter. This has meaning to teachers, particularly teachers who are focused on literacy, and it really just speaks to having students be in a space where they feel safe enough to learn, where they're clear enough and able to focus on learning. And so that's a priority. And there are a whole set of pedagogical things that go along with that. But that's really a staff-facing priority. Priority 2, programming will help to improve awareness, management, and connection. And by connection, we do mean relationships and people connections, but we mean also intellectual connections for our students, as in providing information and education, access to things like our health center already provides access to reproductive health information. So the Wellness Center will just expand the access that our students have to a variety of topics that they need to make connections about. And last, our third priority here is that we'll increase students' wellness education. And that can be by student-led items, that can be by qualified counselors, community organizations, and partnerships. That was a lot, thank you. I think we have a few more slides.
Yep. So like Doreen had just said, you know, our mission really is for the Wellness Center to be a space where all students can reset, recharge, and make connections. And we really want to emphasize that all piece. We are really building capacity in the Wellness Center to design a system at Berkeley High School where every student is able to get what they need to really thrive. Next slide, please. And here you can see the vision for the Wellness Center and what it's going to look like, and get a little bit of an idea of what will actually be happening in the day-to-day in this space that is totally student-centered. In Vignette A, you'll see that that's a space for our peer educators to come together to work on their various projects, that they work with the wellness counselor on how to educate their peers about mental health and about giving and getting support. In Vignette B, that's a choice community, meaning that students can self-direct. The idea is that students elect to drop into the Wellness Center, where they'll be able to choose from a variety of activities to really help regulate and bring them back to that space where they're lowering the affective filter and able to go back to class and engage in their learning. And then the final vignette, in Vignette C, you'll see where there can be consultation, different talks, just a different space for various community members or community organizations to come together and connect with both with the Wellness Center staff and with students as appropriate. And also something to note about all of this furniture, the way that it's been set up is also that it is all modular. It's very flexible, and we can also move it all to the side when we need to be able to make this an education and training space for students, staff, community. And so we really designed a space that's going to help us better provide these services to students.
Thank you. Okay, and I believe this is our last slide, Dr. Shelley. We're almost there. This is just, it's just another 3D view. Just a few more things about this space. So it looks fabulous, but what I would really like the community to take away is that there was an implementation team of 12 to 13 people, and we met bi-weekly for 5 months. Before I pulled anybody together, I did some anticipatory like research and checks. How might we restructure staff who are already doing the work and possibly repurpose their day? Also, how could we, is there a room? Yes, I identified there was a room. What do other wellness centers in our local area, what are they doing? What does it look like? Just to see if we had the makings to move forward. And Berkeley High School absolutely did. And so what you'll see in December, we'll have a grand opening on December 2nd. But what you'll see is a fabulous room. But what's really important about any room is that it's tied into instructional pedagogy. It's tied into clinical and mental health best practices. And our wellness center is supposed to complement what's happening at the health center. We are really a hybrid. If you go to see other wellness centers or search up and look at videos of other ones, you'll see that often, and this is what we validated when we went on visits, often a wellness center houses the school site's only mental health clinicians. Berkeley High School and BUSD is privileged to have a health center on site funded by the city of Berkeley, where we can expand services and have the prevention and education piece. The goal is to minimize crisis. So as we track data, as we look at impact, that will be, if we can minimize crisis, if our students can report that they have information, if we see our students, our focal students in their classrooms, where we've had an impact on the students who have limited participation, school avoidance is minimized, then we'll have made an impact. So I just wanted to highlight, it's a glorious, beautiful room, but there's been a lot of thought put into it. So thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you, Doreen and Melissa. So just real quick, I wanted if Rosina is back on, because I know you got disconnected. We have a mental health first aid, youth mental health first aid training coming up in the next couple of weeks. Are you there, Rosina?
Wi-Fi issue. We have our next youth mental health first aid open for our families. It's going to be at BTEC on September 23rd from 8:30 to 3:30, and we're getting catered meal from King's Delectable. So the flyers are out. We're asking people to register so we can order enough food and books, and they'll be the flyers will be at the open houses at BTA and Berkeley High's open houses, as well as on the E-Tree for both sites.
Thank you, Rosina. And so just a few next steps you can see. I won't go through all of these, but just to mention, we'll continue the implementation of our mental health plan, the MHSSA grant, the Rosina and team will continue that work. We'll provide regular updates on our new MHSSA webpage, BUSD MHSSA webpage, which the link is also in the on the slide. In addition to information about MHSSA, the work that we're doing, you'll also there are also links and resources as well to some of the work that's being done both internally and with our community partners for additional support and services. Again, we have a section on the page for resources as well. And then we'll be providing updates to the governing board regularly about the progress as well. You see the work that's being done, the amazing work that's being done at Berkeley High School with their wellness teams and administrators, and then the district leadership and committees will continue as well. There's a lot to do, a lot to get to, but we're excited for the opportunity to serve the Berkeley community. And we're going to keep pushing forward and attempting to improve every day, continual growth. Let's see the next slide, please. Okay, so that brings us to the conclusion of this presentation. Now we'll be able to answer some questions that you may have. I'll act as moderator. I'll ask Rosina to read the questions. Again, you can put questions in the Q&A. I think it's a button or something at the bottom of the of your Zoom screen, and then we'll see who is best positioned to answer your questions. So Rosina,
thank you, Dr. Shelley. Yes, thank you, Dr. Shelley. Thank you, Courtney and Christy and Nicole, for your amazing presentation. Doreen and Melissa, also very inspiring what's happening at Berkeley High. The first question asks, are we going to see the actual report results from the surveys that were conducted, or was that a prior meeting? I am curious to see what the identified challenges are that these recommendations are supposed to address.
Yes, I can answer that question. Great question. So the full report, so in the coming days, we'll be posting the full report, and it's extensive. It is a lot of pages, a lot of detail, a lot of information. We'll be posting the full report on the MHSSA webpage, which you can find on the student services page of the BUSD website, and we'll provide those links. But you'll be able to see the full report. We'll have the presentation as well, so you'll have the slide deck presentation as well as the video from the presentation will all be on that site. So you'll be able to get in more detail of exactly what's going on with the recommendations and the assessment. So that'll all be coming soon to the pages at the district office or student services, MHSSA.
Thank you, Dr. Shelley. The second question asks if there is a place for public, as in BUSD, parent comments regarding these recommendations.
Is there a place for comment?
Parent comments, BUSD parents, to comment regarding these recommendations.
Yeah, I mean, well, we're gonna put well, we thought it would be in the Q&A session, so we'll be able to hear, but we're going to be doing a board meeting presentation, I believe, coming up real soon as well. Another opportunity to do comments during public comments at the board meeting. And then, of course, you can always email me, Philip Shelley at berkeley.net. You can email Rosina Karen at berkeley.net or Carolyn Perez at berkeley.net with any additional questions. We'll try to put some of the questions that don't get answered. We'll try to put those up on the MHSSA website as well, or webpage, the BUSD version, and be able to answer additional questions. But you can email any one of the three of us any comments if you directly want to provide some of your thoughts as well.
Thank you, Dr. Shelley. The next question asks, it's also not clear what the specific goals of this initiative are based on the survey results or prior results. How do these recommendations tie to concrete goals about future survey results, attendance goals, academic performance, or discipline issues, for example? If this was shared at a prior meeting or in some other report, I would appreciate seeing it. Do you want me to repeat that?
Yeah, because that was a lot.
It was a lot. So basically, this person is asking what the specific goals of the initiative are based on survey results or prior results, and how do these recommendations tie to concrete goals about future survey results, attendance goals, academic performance or discipline issues, for example.
Right. Well, you know what? I don't know if I want to take that or if someone else wants to add to it. Part of what we do is try to serve our students. So everything we do is in service of improving the outcomes of our students. And so whether we talk about the attendance program and how can we support students, or some of the work that's being done with the climate and culture TSA, to the work that's being done at school site with administrators, with other staff. Again, everything, the sole purpose of everything we do is in service to students. So our goal is to ensure that our students have access to the tools they need to be successful moving forward in the 21st century. And so in service of that, as a group of professionals working together, collaborating, and seeing what are some of the best approaches to serving all of our students. So it's a broad question. But again, if you get down to what is the bottom line, what is our goal, right? And the ultimate goal is to ensure that our students are successful and are ready for the next phase of their life as they move forward. But I will also ask anyone else who wants to chime in on the question of what you heard.
Dr. Shelley, I'm wondering if the person might have also been wondering about just the source of the grant. Like if they went to the link that was shared in one of the earliest slides, they'd be able to read what the objectives were for even creating these grant monies and what schools needed to accomplish and teams who were granted these monies. So that's one layer zooming all the way out about what the purpose of this funding sources, and I believe the link is on an early slide.
It is.
And then,
I think it's on the third or fourth slide.
So that's one source. And then just from a site perspective, in terms of the work that is in progress here, our goals from a site perspective are that we are operating off of our WASC goals, articulated WASC goals in critical areas of need, as well as under the district's LCAP goals. And so, for example, all of the work umbrella that we're doing can really zero in on goal number 3 for both the site and the district. So that's my contribution for that.
Thank you, Doreen. We still have a few minutes left if there are any other questions, or if there's anything anyone wants to add as well for the good of the cause. I think we have another question.
Not another question, but I would like to let everyone know that this recording and the PowerPoint from this recording will also be on our website. So probably by tomorrow, thanks to Jessica, you'll be able to access this and the slides tomorrow.
I have one more question. I got another question. So here's the question. How are we measuring the success of these recommendations and initiatives? What are the goals to know if they are successful? There are a lot of dedicated and passionate people here and a lot of funds allocated. How do we know that we've succeeded? That is another excellent question. If we just take, and I'll have Rosina as well add to this. If we're just looking at the MHSSA grant, for example, part of the initial application for the grant in partnership with the city of Berkeley and also Alameda County Office of Education had to be assigned off on it as well. We had to permit a proposal of what we wanted to do if we were selected for this particular grant. And so we went about having a steering committee all of last year, and we worked towards putting together a proposal for the grant. Once we put together the proposal for the grant, we submitted the application sometime in the early fall of last year. Yeah, early fall of last year. And ultimately, our plan was approved for proposal, but part of it comes with reporting. Now, and I think I mentioned it earlier to the reporting group. It's a mouthful, so let me go back to my notes. It's where is it at? Let me find it in my notes. Yes, the MHSOAC, right? That's the commission that oversees the grant. And at different times throughout the year, we're required to report our progress, which includes also data reports. So we have to report on individual things that we're doing with students, also report a progress of everything that's in the plan. So part of what Rosina does in working with the governance board is assuring that the plan is being implemented. We report directly to the board overseeing the grant. They have regular meetings as well that Rosina and Jonathan Maddox attend. And then, like I said, at different points during the year, we actually provide data to the MHOAC.
We'll be posting that on the webpage too. So if anybody wants to follow along. And just a reminder that Carol, Dr. Shelley, and I are happy to engage in any more dialogue. If we haven't answered your question fully, please send any of us an email and we'd be happy to go into it in more detail.
Let's see what we got cooking right now. See if there's another question. No, I believe that may have been the last question. Oh, the governance meetings. I think the governance meetings themselves are not actually open to the public. That's correct, right, Rosina?
Correct. The governance board is just governance board meetings. But again, I am happy to meet with anybody or have a conversation or a Zoom meeting at any time to answer questions.
Thank you, Rosina. So yes, so again, the PowerPoints, the presentation itself, the full report in the coming days will be posted on the BUSD MHSSA webpage. Again, that webpage is directly on the Student Services webpage for the Berkeley Unified School District. And again, you'll be able to see our plan for year 1, year 2, year 3, and year 4. And then we'll be adding our report of progress on there as well. So if there aren't any further questions, I want to thank you all for joining us this evening. Be on the lookout for additional information. And again, we'll be periodically providing updates to the Berkeley Unified School District Governing Board at different times throughout the year. So thank you very much and good evening, everyone.